Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Film Cafe. I'm your host, Jonathan Moody, and we are back in a season six. Holy
Woohoo.
crap, still. So, we did one episode, Paul, me, and Joe Turek. We did an episode, and now we're back here with James L. Edwards. How you doing, James?
Well, hello there. How are you guys?
Yay.
Good. And
Pretty
we got
good.
Paul, A Presenza here. How you doing, Paul?
I'm doing moveless.
We're so excited to have you back, James, because last episode that we all did together like this was Miami Connection, and
Right.
I don't think it was what you. I guess you weren't really too keen on the movie itself.
I still hold that I completely understand its cult status. It just wasn't for me.
Right.
It's just I'm going to chalk it up for the same reason that for some reason never got into Scarface or Indiana Jones or anything like that. It just didn't. I can appreciate people's love for it. It's not for me.
Right.
There you go.
But we're going to talk about I think it was 1991.
1990.
1990. Okay. It was close, 1990 film Twisted Justice, done by the great Troma filmmaker David Heavener, who's we'll get into his what he's doing now later. and all that stuff. But before then, we got to listen to some
Mood music.
And we are back. So we all watched separately. Was a Twisted Justice, and Paul had seen it like separately because like I gave him a copy, and I sent James a copy just in case, or whatever. So
And
James, what?
I had actually seen this a long time ago. didn't finish it. And that's kind of one of the things I wanted to point out is, I had a much different appreciation for it now than when I saw it back in the early 90s. And I don't even think I made it halfway through the first time I tried to watch it.
Really?
Yeah.
What about you, James? Had you ever seen it before?
I not only had not seen it before, I was only familiar with David Heavener's work in name only. I realize now that I missed out on a lot because I'm not in any way, shape, or form going to say that Twisted Justice was good, but it was definitely entertaining,
Oh, yeah.
which kind of surprised me. It was one of those where I'm definitely because of this episode, I will definitely be seeking out other David Heavener productions.
So I was okay. So what really made me want to do this is there's a movie called Scrotal Vengeance that Chris Seaver did,
Right.
and Debbie Sean holds a poster of David Heavener and calls him David Heavener because she didn't know his name. Nobody knew his name, right? And everything. So for the longest time, I called him David Heavener.
I called him that too.
Right. And then I watched one of his one of his videos now, and they were interviewing him, and they said, please welcome David Heavener. And I was like, oh, okay. His name's got heaven in it. Okay, I get it now, and especially with what he does. He's now like I guess he's a devout Christian, maybe televangelist kind of guy, which we'll probably get into later.
Right.
But this is the far from it. So he's like more, I guess now he's more reformed, because
I was going to say most of his movies are far from it, at least the early stuff in the early 90s or 80s, early 90s.
Exactly.
Up into 2000, as I recall.
Yep. So, okay, James, you said you really enjoyed this movie. What made you really what got you into it?
Honestly, it was like watching a really beautiful train wreck. It was like, there's so many things in it that is like, for one, and again, far be it from me to ever shit talk anybody, but the fact that David Heavener had kind of set himself up, and apparently this was an ongoing trend with him, as this like dime store Mel Gibson kind of actor, is fascinating to me because he just, I'm a big, the thing that worked for me about this film was I'm a cameo guy. I love you can give me the shittiest movie in the world, and if you pack it full of cameos, I'm going to find something about it that I dig. And this did. So,
yeah, that's one of my favorite things is Zombiegeddon. Mm-hmm. And that's got like a shit ton of B-movie cameos.
Oh,
yeah. And I mean, love it. Absolutely.
Imagine trying to watch Zombiegeddon with nobody you recognize in it. It'd be painful as hell.
Right.
But because of the foresight of having all of these, in some cases, pseudo celebrities involved in it, all of a sudden it just ups the game.
Well, can you give us a list of some of the cameos?
Well, and again, I use the word cameo very, very sparingly. Like the only real cameo in this, oddly enough, had had second billing, was Karen Black. It was pretty obvious that they had her for one day, even to the point where, God forbid I ruin a major plot point in this, but even when we discover what happened to her, the body double they have her, it's painfully obvious this woman's like early 20s.
Are you saying that wasn't Karen Black's
believe it or not, that was not, I apologize, but that was not Karen Black's dumper that you got to see in Twisted Justice. It was not. I hate to ruin the illusion, but that was not her.
Damn it. Now my day has been ruined.
But no, I mean, you've got Eric Estrada, you've got Jim Brown, who I absolutely love, who sadly is completely wasted in this movie. There's no reason to even have his character.
I know.
Him and the other guy just searching the whole time, pretty much.
Right.
Like for the gun, which, I mean, it comes back later, like it has a point, but like, it's like, come on. Like,
give them something to do.
I know.
It's like they took a look at the script and said, well, shit, we've got Eric Estrada. Give him all the dialogue. Just have him do something. I mean, but you've also got Shannon Tweed in a very, it's one of those where I get what they were trying to accomplish, but it didn't make any sense because
because it was supposed to be her voice. Like her voice sounds like a guy,
right? But that's the thing; it barely sounded like a guy. Yeah, it basically sounded like, you remember in This Is the End when oh God, what's his name from
Jonah Hill.
Jonah Hill is possessed.
Yeah,
that's what the voice sounded like.
It does sound like the, when he's like, oh, what did he say in that movie? He goes, the power of Christ compels you. Oh, it compels me, huh? Does it really compel me, Jay?
Yeah, I got news for you. It's not so compelling.
Yeah. That was actually that was the best scene of the whole movie, though. That part.
I mean, we even got Don Stroud in there. So, I mean, there's a lot of people in this thing.
Don Stroud, yeah.
Yeah.
But a lot of people that are in there are just highly underused because, in my opinion, of a really lacking screenplay. So,
I kind of agree with that. But what are you going to say, Paul?
For me, I remember trying to see this in the early 90s. I don't remember exactly when. It was just one of a weary parade of Lethal Weapon wannabes that I had seen at the time. And let's face it, even though the movie is a lot of fun, it's also dumb as a box of rocks. And at the time, I just did not have room in my life for yet another dumb Lethal Weapon wannabe.
Right.
Now, seeing it years later with all this time, I'm like, oh yeah, this is dumb, but it's a lot of fun, and I like the way what they did, and I like how they went for it. I'm just gonna go ahead and forgive the ridiculous storyline and dumb stuff that didn't really need to happen. It's still entertaining. It's an entertaining B movie that does what it's supposed to do as a B movie. You know what I mean? So it's okay.
Now that being said, Paul, were you familiar with other David Heavener films, or for that matter, were you, Jonathan?
I was familiar with a couple of them. Twisted Fate was one of the ones. Let's see. He was also in a few other films from other folks. Like he was in Guns of El Chupacabra. So of course, I love anything.
Scott Shaw.
Yeah, Scott Shaw and Donald G. Jackson do. So that's kind of where I knew him initially. but I also know he did a few other things. What's the one that Angel Blade, which he did later on, and I think Outlaw Force I had seen. I think that was his first film. So I was familiar with him, but there's a pile of his movies that I haven't seen yet. I just this one is one that I had seen at least half of.
Right.
Before. I was just like, yeah, you know.
No, I had heard of him. I mean, once again, I had heard of him through what is it, through Squirrel Vengeance and stuff. But later, I actually owned one of his movies because I think DJ Perry was in it or something. Or had like a small part in it. But it was called Outlaw Prophet. You know, and then when I was on my I'm gonna buy Twisted Justice thing, I went on eBay or Amazon or something, and I bought Raging Cajun as well. So I had to get a couple of his flicks, and I plan to do more, you know, for future seasons of Indie Film Cafe because you know they're just silly and fun.
Of the ones that you guys have seen. I mean, were they pretty much on par with Twisted Justice?
Yeah,
yeah.
He's kind of like your typical 80s era action kind of flick that you'd see in a VHS store, you know, like a Ma and Pa store. And the other one I forgot to mention was Prime Target with Jenny Lee Harrison, one of my crushes from back in the day. So yeah, I was familiar with some of his work. Just, you know, there's just such a giant pile of movies that even back in the early 90s when I was grabbing all kinds of movies by the handfuls at a video stores, I still never got around to seeing all of his stuff. And I didn't really see any of the later stuff that he's done. So
yeah, I mean, he kind of stopped after a while and just started doing the religious stuff. So he's been concentrating on that. Like if you look at his was a YouTube channel, he has a YouTube channel, everybody. It is like David Heavener something Prophet.
Oh dear.
Yeah, it is Last Evangelist. You know, so yeah, he has now crossed on over to that side. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does a
there's a lot more money in it for him, probably.
Oh yeah. I mean, looking at his IMDb, it looks like upwards of 2020 he was still doing schlocky what was it B movies. So I have to wonder if that maybe kind of caused problems with his religious beliefs as well, because I mean he's got stuff like Diary of a Lunatic and Drac von Stroller's Horrifying Tales of the Dead anthology.
I never understood why you couldn't be. I mean, I'm not a person of faith. I'm an atheist, but I never understood why you couldn't be, you know, a believer in all that. But also separately, do your own thing as an artist, whether it's music or a writer or movies or whatever.
I mean,
one doesn't necessarily have to do the other, you know.
That's true. I'm a Christian and I do horror films, you know, but I don't push my faith onto people. You know what I mean? Like it's a matter of that. To me, that's a matter of your choice, you know?
Right.
And I think when you call yourself the last evangelist, you know, you're probably taking on a pretty serious moniker of faith right there.
Right.
Well, plus, you're also calling yourself out to the fact that you're not part of any of the mainstream religious groups either, because they're not going to,
they're not going to allow you to do those films.
No. Well, no, they're not going to allow you to call yourself something like that.
Right. Well, that's the thing. I mean, I know, like, growing up, I remember there was a religious call-in show, Bob Larson, and he would go on forever. I mean, I'm sure it was sensationalism, but he would go on about where kids would call in saying, "Oh yeah, I saw the new Nightmare on Elm Street film and I love it." He's like, "Well, you're going to hell. If you that's your thing, you're going to hell." So I have to assume that at some point, some of his followers or whatever have to be like, "Well, wait a minute, I saw Twisted Justice, and I'm supposed to follow this guy." It's like,
Yeah,
Right.
it's just like everything else, though. I mean, there's so many different variations and flavors of religion out there. Some of them are going to have a problem with that sort of thing. Others are not going to care. I mean, I grew up as a Catholic, even though I didn't really believe in it,
Right.
and none of them would have given a two hoots whether you go out and make a movie with all kinds of horror elements or not. It doesn't really, nobody really cares. But
The
you've got
nudity
other,
might.
well, not even that, I don't think. But there are other kinds of religions out there that are like, dancing is evil and rock and roll music is
Right.
evil and, eating potato chips is evil. And,
We've seen horror films with that, isn't it? Like
yeah,
where the
yeah.
people act like that. That's like everything you do is evil if you don't give your life to, your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. But I want to get back to this thing because we were talking earlier about the fact that this is a Lethal Weapon kind of movie, and this is Lethal Weapon if they didn't have what is it, Murtaugh,
Griggs and Murtaugh.
Right.
He's both Griggs and Murtaugh.
Right. This is Lethal Weapon if they didn't have Murtaugh, a budget, or a good script.
They could have had Jim Brown be Murtaugh.
Right.
Well, that's what I mean. He's completely wasted in this film. I love Jim Brown. I am a tremendous Jim Brown fan. And to see him slumming in this, like literally, it almost feels like he happened to wander onto the set and it's like, holy shit, it's Jim Brown. Hey, put this futuristic cop uniform on. He's like, well, what am I supposed to say? He's like, oh, don't worry about it.
Especially because Jim Brown is associated with a lot of action stuff. And
right.
He doesn't really do any kind of action.
He tears apart a house looking for a gun. That's
kind of thankless, I mean, you could have stuck anybody on there, but there's money in the name, so
I know that's so sad though, and it's sad that Jim Brown just said, "Sure, okay, I'll do this." Little thankless role, he probably turned something down in order to do this movie where he does nothing.
Right. I mean, I can't imagine him getting the script ahead of time and going, "Oh well, I can really do something with this."
Yeah,
this is
Shakespeare.
This is meaty.
No, this was just a stepping stone on his career. Not that he's been doing a whole lot in the 90s and 2000s anyway, but he's got plenty of other things going on, and it's all right.
So he was it David Heavener's character is basically a what was he called, like the Psych Squad? Is that what they called it?
Yeah, he's like trained as a police psychiatrist, but also a forensics expert, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think you combine the two.
I'm a doctor and a lawyer and an astronaut. Oh, really?
That would be awesome, though. If somebody were all those things, but no.
Well, you have to remember too that he did this literally just a couple of years after being in both I'm Gonna Get You Sucker and The Running Man. So it's like you can't even really dispute the fact that it's like, oh well, he needed the money. It's like I don't know how they cast him in this. I don't.
Yeah, I don't. That's a good question. If we ever get David Heavener on our show, we gotta ask him that question. How'd you get Jim Brown?
I mean,
the Lord works in mysterious ways.
That same year, he did the "I'm Gonna Get You Sucker" TV spinoff that didn't last. That Hammer, Slammer, and Slade. So again, he wasn't hurting for money.
About that.
Jesus. So yeah. So Jim Brown's just like, yeah, I'll take it, even though I don't need to.
I have to assume.
On the other hand, that was probably one of the better Eric Estrada performances I've ever seen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, they utilized him well. He
said fuck.
was that what you were caught on?
To me. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, does his character also, if I'm remembering this correctly, because again, Jonathan had sent me the movie and I watched it the day I got it because I had a free moment. I'm like, yeah, let's check this out. And I talked to him, I'm like, oh, I watched the movie. He's like, oh, we're not doing the podcast until I think it was like 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
And I'm old, so it's like I barely remember what I had for lunch today, let alone it's like what I watched that. So am I remembering correctly to where Eric Estrada's dialogue was very there was a lot, not necessarily slurs, but a lot of references to him being Mexican through the whole thing?
There are a few, yeah.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
He was definitely that pissed off police sergeant, yelling at the cop who won't follow the rules. That whole typical dynamic thing.
But
And
he does follow orders.
He would throw in some Mexican stuff, and then David Heavener would be like, "I don't understand Spanish, sir. Sorry."
But he sure had those donuts
donuts. They were small though. That's the thing. That was like, what? Don't they have big sized donuts in LA? Come on.
They were not very appetizing looking donuts for like showing, hey, you did good. Here's a donut. It's like Krispy Kremes.
Here's it's called budget. This movie didn't really have that big of the budget went to Jim Brown,
right?
Getting him for a day or two.
The budget went to that and the unnecessary car explosion.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Troma, you have to have a car explosion,
right. And because even though this was come out in 1990, this movie was 1980s all over.
Oh, big time, yeah.
Absolutely, the hairstyles and the music and everything, and
it felt like Samurai Cop meets Lethal Weapon,
right?
Right. And that's how I would describe it, because it was very Samurai Cop. I'm this guy that can't basically be beat,
I definitely got Samurai Cop vibes watching it. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, which I mean, I like Samurai Cop a little better, but I think that's just because it's sillier and it doesn't take itself too seriously. This takes itself a little bit too seriously. I think
it does take itself a little too seriously, but at the same time, stuff actually works and makes sense, and the production for its low budget is actually well done. And I had forgotten this was a Troma movie, and in a way, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember a day when Troma actually had movies that actually weren't, you could see them and they weren't, ridiculous, cheap garbage.
Right. Well, now that you actually bring up a good point, Paul, because one thing that I discovered by not revisiting this, but with Jonathan introducing me to this, was I'm apparently, I have to assume that I'm apparently a huge format snob, because I'm watching this and the quality of the film was so incredibly bad. Not the film making itself, but as far as the transfer and everything. So I'm sitting here thinking, well, this is DVD. I get it. It's no big deal. And so out of curiosity, last night I put on my Blu-ray of Bloodsucking Freaks, also from Troma.
Oh,
and I'm like,
you put a Blu-ray on?
Yeah, I put a Troma Blu-ray on. I'm like, this looks like shit. This looks like shit too. So it's like, obviously, it's not necessarily the transfer. It's that nobody at Troma apparently knows how to do a proper digital transfer.
No, well,
watching Twisted Justice, it was fun. But at the same token, it was like viewing it through a dirty pantyhose.
Yeah, they're not going to spend a lot of money on the transfer. That's for sure. Right. It's a pan and scan, probably.
Well, no, they're okay. So we got Tromeo and I got Tromeo and Juliet, and we watched it the first season of Indie Film Cafe, and the transfer is terrible. It looks just like the DVD. So they don't care. But the thing is, Lloyd loves everything looking like it originally was. He's not into, fixing things up and making it look better. Like if you look at the Troma logo, it hasn't changed since the 1980s.
Right.
So he's not going to do that.
I have to question that too, because it's like, does Lloyd love that, or is he cheap? Does he just not want to spend the money to?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
I mean, I'm not down on the guy. That shit's expensive. But what I'm saying is it a matter of, I like to present these? It's like, well, if that's the case, don't hype up in your intro and on the box digitally remastered. It's like, well, no, it's really not.
I hear you, and I know exactly where you're coming from. And I think probably money has a lot to do with it. And a matter of fact, if Lloyd was to do, this is just my opinion, but if Lloyd were to do that with any movie, it would probably be Toxic Avenger, and that would be like the one.
Right.
Spend the money on.
Or maybe Sergeant Kabuki Man, or something like that.
Well,
maybe.
But that's the thing. You have to look at what Vinegar Syndrome does with a lot of the Troma property that they acquire. Those films look fucking stunning. Those films look absolutely amazing. Things like Blood, things that they really don't have any right looking as good as they do. Things like Beware Children at Play, Blood Hook.
Blood Hook the Blood Hook I saw was a Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome, which Vinegar Syndrome does take movies from Troma and rematches them, actually makes them look good.
That's right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Why he doesn't do it is because he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
Right.
Somebody else can come in and take it. I would like to see maybe Vinegar Syndrome could take this off their hands, digitally remaster it, give some commentary or something,
right,
and have some fun with it. But sadly, I just don't see this or any of David's movies being something that they're seeking out.
He's old school too, and he's probably also going to say, do I put money into this when, next week there's going to be 8K, and then the week after that, 16K, and the week after that,
you can't live like that, because then you're just never going to do anything.
Well, right. You'll never catch up to technology. It's going to keep changing, and therefore you don't have to, because you've already made the movie.
Right. Oh, exactly. Well, and that's the thing too. Realistically, it's one of those things where I understand not wanting to dump the money into it, but in this day and age, with the price of these discs, there's no reason not to. I know I was very disappointed last night when, knowing what I paid for my Bloodsucking Freaks Blu-ray, taking a look at it and going, oh, okay, well, that's what I did. It's like, okay, so I bought this, but I could have probably eventually waited a year or so for Vinegar Syndrome to do a decent job and maybe pay an extra $5 for that,
And then there's the other argument, how many people think that physical media is going to stick around,
right?
And everything's going to streaming, and the streaming really doesn't really matter if it's 4K or not,
right?
I love how we're talking more about everything else, but
Well, come on, the plot is not the movie's strong point. There's
I was gonna say
dumb shit that happens,
but it is fun. Like, it did have some fun scenes. I did like the killer guy. I felt like he was. It was so funny how, like, there's like one guy that got struck by the first guy that David met up with on top of the tower. It took him a while before those two things like hit him, or whatever, and like made him fall down. And so I thought that's how it was going to be with this guy. Like, it was going to take him a while, and he was tough.
Evil chemist.
That dude like dropped like a sack of potatoes pretty quickly. Right. And I was like, okay.
I'm trying to remember. It wasn't the guy who played the evil chemist. Wasn't he from something as well? I'm trying to remember who that was.
Probably.
I recognized him, but I can't for the life of me place what I knew him from.
We call him evil chemist, but don't remember what his actual name was in it. But if I saw it, I would. It's not Steelmore. Steelmore and Morris were the.
Yeah, Steelmore was the main villain, wasn't
he? Yeah. He was the main villain. So there's the Kelsey and Morris were the two cops. Right. Luther Pontelli was Don Stroud.
Right.
Mr. Tremaine was Don Scribner. Was that the guy's name?
I'll be honest, I don't know. I have no clue.
I don't recall.
No, because that was Mr. and Mrs. Tremaine.
But I will say that as a villain, he was dumb enough to leave a freaking witness behind who could describe him, and not only describe him, but say exactly how these murders were happening, able to connect him. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Now, I don't know if you guys noticed this or not, but the one scene that's completely out of left field, where Hefner's character leaves Eric Estrada's office and kisses the secretary for no apparent reason.
No reason.
That was Tanya Roberts, right?
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did not realize that. No.
I only realized it while I was going through the ending credits. I'm like, holy shit! Another thankless role.
Nice.
Did you work with Tanya?
I did not. No, I was a huge fan, but never got the opportunity to work with her.
Oh, okay. I thought you had for some reason or another, but I know she's been in a lot of like B movies. So
I was
of the
I was
past.
actually at one time supposed to work with Eric Estrada, but that fell through, unfortunately.
Oh shit, that sucks.
Would have
You know.
loved to have done that.
But yeah,
But,
it's
but then when they have their fight in the I guess underneath the house in
Mhm.
the crawl space, which is a weird
Right.
place to have a fight, and they're fighting, and then they just happen to knock over the acid, and then the evidence just happens to
Right.
fly right into it. It's like, oh, come
What
on.
an unfortunate series of events.
No, oh dear, that's troubling for me. Now we have to let him go,
Right.
but now allows him to go off and do more killing, and yeah, it's just it's dumb. But the thing is that they make it fun, and even though I was kind of on the fence about his character, because his character on the one hand annoys me because it's that whole right wing cop fantasy thing. There are these dumb left wing people who think that you can just coddle criminals, and now nobody has a gun, which is ridiculous. That's never
Right.
going to happen. And now the world's gone to hell because of that. On the other hand, he's also an Oakland Raiders fan, eats donuts, and has a pet rat. So I kind of like that
so
too.
you didn't. Oh yeah, was he sleeping in his tub?
Yes,
Yeah.
he's sleeping
And
in his
again,
pub.
no rationale for that whatsoever. It's like we're just supposed to
Well,
accept.
I think he was doing it because the other two cops were in there tearing his shit up every day.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't
Oh.
catch that. I just assumed it was like, yeah, once he's off duty, he's such a hard drinker, he falls asleep in the tub, kind of thing.
Well, remember he says he doesn't drink alcohol. So yeah, no, I think it's
Yeah.
because his shit's getting thrown around every morning.
Yeah, that's a good reason. I didn't even think about that, but that's
That's
good.
good.
It was just like I was like, wait, when I saw him at the tub, I was like, is that a bed that looks like a tub, or is
Because
that
remember,
literally like?
he gets out and he goes back into the room, and they're already out there throwing his stuff around. So yeah,
Yeah, he's so annoyed, and he even also offers him coffee or something, or whatever. Just, it's just so nice to them, even though
Right.
they're, and
now, here's the thing, though. When the real police, get a search warrant, it's generally for that day, for that
Right.
place. If you're going to keep going back every single day, you have to get another warrant. At least that's the way my feeling or my understanding of
I
the law
think
is.
they did have that because didn't he ask twice if he had? Do you guys got a warrant again?
Like, well,
Yeah.
you have to keep in mind this was the future. Maybe in the future they took away their guns and basically said, "Hey, we get you a search warrant forever."
Yeah, my
It's a
point is
forever warrant.
you're not going to find too many judges out there who are going to say, "Oh yeah, keep bothering this guy over and over and over."
Right.
You get one shot, buddy. Find that gun, or you're done.
The
Right.
future, 2020.
Uh-huh.
Where nowadays, I mean, it does it's sort of funny because now there's like the defund police stuff, and
Right.
this is sort of like defunding the police and taking away their guns.
Except the idea in defund the police now is to just take away their tanks and machine guns and shit they
Right.
don't freaking need, as opposed to taking away all of their guns, which would be
Right.
ridiculous.
Yeah, that would be. Well, I mean, how can you protect and serve if
So,
you can't
Jonathan,
protect
are,
and
are
serve?
you
So
Are
they
you-
have these little tranquilizer guns that are supposed to work, and of course, therein lies the whole plot device. In that we have the evil chemist who is making this drug so that the tranquilizers conveniently don't work. So
right?
Yeah.
getting around all that, and of course, it still doesn't matter because you still got these guys out there running around with guns anay. And I love how he fights the evil thugs, and they're all like,
Yeah.
we're so evil, we have to laugh.
They're like Joker henchmen.
Right.
It's just like, So, Jonathan, are you basically insinuating that David Heavener was the Nostradamus of our time and foretold the whole defund the police thing?
Maybe a little bit. I think he, because I mean, I, if you were living, in the 90s, you're probably thinking that at some point or another in the future, there's going to be a problem with police. Right? Like police are not going to, because even back in the 90s, police weren't looked well upon. We watched a great movie that Paul picked for Film Freaks, Prince of the City, and that was about how the police were had to do everything they could in the 70s just to just to make ends meet, and everything. So
That's a great
I sort
movie.
of get it. Like they were heading toward that maybe thing, and they thought maybe by the year 2020 the cops would, because that was what, 30 years,
Right.
like.
Well, remember the movie that this is aping, though. This was the time when it was the whole cop who won't obey the rules kind
Mm.
of thing. So,
Right.
and he's Murtaugh without being extra crazy, or not Murtaugh, he's
Riggs.
Griggs without being extra crazy Griggs. You
Right.
know,
He's a little tamed, a
he's
little.
eccentric Griggs, but he's not crazy Griggs.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Now that
see,
being said, now that we've watched a movie that's fun, I'm gonna give it its dues, but not a great movie. Not a great movie in the sense of it being
No,
a late '80s, early '90s action film. For
no.
you guys, what were some of your favorite action films that this movie was aping for that time?
I mean, obviously the first comes to mind is Die Hard,
Right.
Lethal Weapon was
Mhm.
obviously the biggest influence on it. Um, I don't know. I never really, I didn't watch many of them in the 80s. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know, I mean, there was movies like, yeah, I don't really know that much, that because I was trying to think of like other action movies, but like,
Uh, well,
not a
I,
lot
I
of
mean, I,
police.
I personally preferred more of the anti-hero stuff that you ended up getting with John Carpenter. So like your Snake
Right.
Plisskens and that sort of a thing. At the time, which is the other reason why when I first watched this, I was a whole lot less interested in it than I was now.
Right.
Um, so yeah, and there were a few others that like Shannon Tweed or Kathy Shower would end up doing later on from the female point of view, where they were going off and doing all that.
Robo Woman or something?
Maybe not
Robo
that one so
Chick?
much.
Robo Chick?
Yeah,
Well,
Robo.
actually, Paul, now that you bring that up, maybe you can help me with this. I'm sure I mean, literally, it's an IMDb search away, but you're a wealth of information, so I'm going to hit you with it.
Oh.
There was a Shannon Tweed movie that literally was almost a direct 100% ripoff of Die Hard, where Shannon Tweed is basically the McClane character, and Andrew Dice Clay is the Alan Rickman character, and Roddy Piper is the Alexander Goodenough character. And the whole idea is, rather than taking over Nakatomi Plaza, the bad guys have decided to take a beauty pageant hostage in order for a ransom.
As you do.
It's fucking just phenomenal. It's absolutely amazing. Robert Dabby's in it too. I'm trying to think who else, but it's and
I found it online. It's called No Contest.
No Contest. That's what it is. Okay, yeah. Have you guys seen that one?
No, but that sounds amazing, and I want to see
We
it.
need
so
to
bad.
do that on a future episode because
Yes.
it's so much fun.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
I mean, for me, as far as the '80s stuff goes, that this movie is kind of aping. The two that I can bring up that were unconventional that I just thought were a lot of fun were Tango and Cash, which I absolutely loved. And shockingly enough, around the same time that this was made, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane.
With Andrew Dice Clay, yeah.
Yeah, which I love both of those movies. But I could definitely see, now granted, this definitely has a more like Running Man futuristic approach to it, but I could definitely see those type of films being aped.
We gotta do it sometime, because it's like free on Freevee, which is like
nice.
the IMDb free site. So like, yeah, let's do that for season 7.
Yeah,
I'd love to.
I think the other one that I was gonna bring up was the Fred Ward movie that I loved, the Remo Williams.
So much fun. Yeah.
That's kind of more along the lines that I really liked as well.
So yeah, this was a lot of fun compared to like I was actually expecting it to be trash because I hadn't seen it.
I mean, it's got some trash to it. It definitely has some stink to it, but there's enough fun. And for a low budget B movie, like I said, they did a really, really, really good job. I'm guessing by the time Twisted Justice was made, David Heavener pretty much had a pretty good idea how to make and produce a film like this, to make it do that the way he wants it done and to keep it under budget. And I'm sure that's why Troma really liked working with them. So, it's like, we'll let you do all the action stuff because this seems to be right up your alley.
Right.
So, and like I said, this was much better produced for its budget than many others of its time and of its ilk. So that was
Right.
surprising.
Yeah, I mean, there's an explosion. There was a car chases.
Do we know roughly what the budget was for this movie?
You can look it up and see if it has a thing on IMDb. They lie though, but
Oh yeah,
really,
yeah.
you might not really get the real thing. But
I mean, to put things into perspective, I know this movie was made about a year after we did Robot Ninja. And were given a list when we got Burt Ward for that film. We were given a list of actors within the budget range that we were allowed to get for a cameo. And Eric Estrada was on that list. And if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to be sued here, but if I'm not mistaken, around that time he was working for about $1,500 a day. So if that's the case, I mean, that's incredibly affordable for someone like Eric Estrada.
Yeah. Wow. What's he doing now? Is he still making stuff? I mean,
I saw him, show up in some Chupacabra movie like maybe 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, I've got that one.
But I haven't really seen him do much since.
Oh,
he's got to be getting up. Is he doing stuff?
He was in Cobra Kai.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool.
He was in the new season. The newest season. Second episode of the 5th season. That's crazy.
How old is he now?
He played Molina. I don't remember that guy. I'm gonna have to check that out. He must have. Were they still in Mexico back then? He might have played one of the Mexican guys in it or whatever, which is funny considering this movie. Now.
Right.
Oh, and that's the other thing I wanted to point out about that David Heavener's movies. The other reason why I had heard of it or knew about him before, it's pointed out on the Wikipedia page about him, is that a lot of his movies aired on HBO. And USA, and so that's
wow.
I remember those movies when they kind of came out back then. So yeah.
Yeah, there's I remember USA had some great stuff like Up All Night and and whatnot. So I bet this had to have shown up on one of those things back then.
Because there was only like that one, not even 5-minute, nude scene where, I mean, that could easily have gone away and nobody would have cared. It wouldn't have mattered.
You're talking about the prostitute at the beginning. Right. That's with the killer. Yeah.
Right.
Well, and don't forget Karen Black's butt double.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, there was a the copy of this on YouTube for free, and it did take away the nudity and stuff. So it took away like the whole scene of the chick talking to the bad guy, while he was photographing her, like with blood and everything. So it was, I don't know. It was interesting that they would do that, but I guess, I mean, nudity gets flagged probably pretty quick.
Or not. I mean, there's plenty of nudity on YouTube. It doesn't matter. But the other thing about our wonderful chemist, he also apparently knows how to massage, because he gets in to kill that one chick. He shows up with a massage's like uniform, and he's got a table. Those things are not cheap or easy to find, by the way.
Right. I think I figured he killed the person who was supposed to go, and he, said everything. Like he stole all. Like we don't see that, but I don't think he's a massagist on the side.
That's the problem. He seemed to like know it, and she was perfectly okay. It's like, oh, you've got wonderful hands. If you don't know how the hell to massage,
right,
you're gonna know. Come on,
Hey guys, I've got to take care of my dog real quick. I don't know why she's screaming, but you guys talk,
you're fine.
Okay. Yeah. But yeah, that's just part of the stinky movie magic, is we're just gonna nod and wink and just say, okay, yeah, he just happens to have the massage table, and he just happens to have the uniform, and he just happens to know how to massage somebody realistically enough to put them off guard long enough to kill someone. We're just gonna nod and wink and let that go.
It's like what was it, Johnny Depp's line in Ed Wood? He's like, "Haven't you ever heard of suspension of disbelief?"
Right.
It's like just read. I mean, like I said, not to take anything away from this film, this was a fun movie. It was not a good movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I was never bored.
No, not at all.
Right. I was annoyed, but I wasn't bored.
Right.
And like I said, back in the day, I disliked this a lot more. Like I said, the first time I tried to see this, I didn't even finish it because there were just so many other movies like this.
Mm-hmm.
And part of me, like I said, didn't really care for Tuck You. But he had enough qualities about him that I by the end of the film, I was kind of rooting for him a little bit, and I was okay with it.
Yeah, I do love the fact when he finally meets Shannon Tweed. It's like it's supposed to be this big reveal, and it's like, no, this was never the only person that believed that this was a dude was you.
Right.
Well, and here's my thing: is why was her voice done like that to begin with?
What was the deal with that? That just didn't.
Because the plot demanded it.
I think it was one of those where it's like, here's a really great idea that I've written. It's like, well,
it's a funny ending. It's one of those endings where the guy gets the girl, or whatever, and so the whole time he doesn't know it's fucking Shannon Tweed, or Shannon Tweed not taking her top off or whatever, like she probably got paid less than she normally would.
I was gonna say the budget did not allow a nude scene with Shannon Tweed, so it's like, well, she can act, just throw her in there,
She was good. I liked her.
Yeah.
She was funny. I thought it was cute, I guess, but it was silly,
Right.
So I don't know. This movie is going to be hard to do the stinkometer for, because, in my opinion, because you're right. Like, this is a fun movie, but it's not.
It's a dumb movie. It's dumb as a box of rocks.
It's dumb.
It's very disposable. It's something that I don't regret watching at all. I did enjoy myself watching it. Will I ever watch it again? Probably not. That would probably never happen.
This is your low budget popcorn film.
Right.
I mean, when I watch it by myself, probably not. When I watch it with a bunch of friends who'd never seen it and I want to introduce them to David Heavener, probably. Like, this might be a great introduction to David Heavener, in my opinion, because it feels like Getaven, but Getaven was we watched that movie. You ever seen that movie, James?
Getaven? I don't think I have. No.
Get Even. You need to see that. It's roughly the same time period, except there's a lot more country line crap.
Country line
crap going on.
Is anybody in it?
No. Well, yeah. What's his face? The dude who was like in all. Another guy who was in a bunch of '80s movies. I forget his name. Gosh.
William Smith.
Oh, okay.
And Wings Hauser. See, you're talking my language now. I'm a huge Wings Hauser fan. So you would like it. It's
he's freaking drunk throughout the whole thing, man. So
you just described Wings Hauser in the 80s and 90s. So.
Right. Champagne and Bullets is the other way that it's known.
Yeah.
Right.
It was.
Okay. That I have heard of. Okay.
It's John DeHart, and very similar. He's the director, writer, producer.
Right.
He didn't do the. I think he actually did some of the awful music. But
he was a lawyer, right?
Right. Unlike David Heavener, he does not do any of those things well at all. Right. So that's the big difference, is that David Heavener is talented enough and has enough of a budget that he can pull all of this off, even with a dumb, silly script. He still manages to make it fun. Whereas John DeHart does not have those skills or the budget.
Right.
And it's just plain terrible. And it just comes off as a terrible ego trip. Even though he's got Wings Hauser and he's got William Smith in there and some other folks.
Well, Neil Breen does this kind of,
right.
like very egocentric. But this David seemed like an actor first, and then he decided, I could go make my own films and stuff.
Right.
So,
well, I mean,
totally
I can tell you, a year after he made Twisted Justice, he did something called Prime Target. And I'm gonna have to track that one down, because he sings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 songs in the movie. So it's
what?
like,
It's a musical?
I don't know what. I'm assuming not. It looks like an action film, but he's listed as performer and writer on 7 songs in the movie.
Yeah, he does a lot of music and a lot of songs and stuff in other films too. But here just to put the last point about Get Even and John DeHart. The other big difference of that Get Even does, and a lot of those kind of egocentric movies that just come once, and that usually their character is more like a Mary Sue. You know, they're always the strongest or the cleverest. They always beat up somebody. They're always the guy. You know what I mean? In this one, he gets his butt kicked. He kind of makes mistakes. He, you know,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was watching it.
Realistic person.
Right.
Yeah,
I'm looking at this thing that that Prime Target that I was bringing up. I've got to see this. It's got David Heavener as John Bloodstone, but it also stars Tony Curtis, Isaac Hayes, Robert Reed from the Brady Bunch, and Andrew Robinson and Don Stroud.
What a cast!
I gotta see this thing.
God!
It's a 99-cent purchase on Amazon. I know what I'm doing this evening.
So, wait, 99, like okay, plus shipping or something? Or?
No, it's just for
a
Prime
rental.
Video.
Okay.
Yeah, for a rental. So
okay.
Right. If you get the chance, he was in another Scott Shaw movie called Rock and Roll Cops 2. You got to check that one out too.
Because there were so many unanswered questions in Rock
and
Roll Cops 1.
Robert is in there, and
was it
Train is in there.
What's it called again?
Rock and Roll Cops 2, The Adventure Begins.
Because the adventure didn't begin in the first one, did it?
Right. So, and you see, that's where I kind of knew him from, was that he was in all of those movies with Donald G. Jackson, or at least not all of them, but he was in a bunch of them, and Scott Shaw. So, my obsession with those guys.
I'm totally buying the soon on eBay the Prime Target DVD.
Yeah, I've got to.
Yes.
I've got to see it.
Yeah.
What's funny, Paul, you had just mentioned Rock and Roll Cops 2, The Adventure Begins. It looks like a buddy cop film, but from what I can tell, and I'm trying to make sure, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but it's Kevin Eastman, who created the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, who's not an actor, Robert Z'Dar, William Smith, and Julie Strain. Yeah, he's got some great cast in these things.
Oh, yeah. And he plays a character named Bonzarelli.
Is that who David Heavener plays?
Yeah.
And Samantha Phillips from Phantasm 2's in it also.
Samantha Phillips.
Well, Scott Shaw worked a lot with Kevin Eastman's former wife, Julie Strain, I believe. So I think, a lot, it's weird because like Hollywood at that time, in the 90s and late 80s and everything, they all seem to like all know each other, and they all kind of like,
great. Great period.
I'm sad that it doesn't feel like that exists anymore. Like that's not what independent films are like anymore. Because we were talking, Paul and I talked to Joe Estevez about, we had him on our show. Right. We were chit-chatting him about working with Donald G. Jackson and stuff. And he said like Donald would just call him up and go, "Hey, we're making a movie today. Do you want to come over?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, sure." And he had no idea because none of them was written. So they would just shoot things on the fly and everything like that. And that just drives me bonkers to know there were people who just did that, it just doesn't happen these days. You can't call Joe Estevez up now and be like, "Hey, we're making a movie. Do you want to come?" Like it just doesn't happen that way anymore.
No, that was one of those wonderful magical periods that just don't exist anymore. That's why I want to make that Stinkopedia, man. But the other thing about the Prime Target is, like I said, Jenny Lee Harrison, who was one of my many little obsessions back in the day. She just has that face that I loved.
Right.
She was in a whole bunch of 80s TV shows that I just watched simply because she was in it. So, yeah, it's definitely a movie we have to check out on Indie Film Cafe.
Oh, we got so many, man.
I know.
I have a list that goes all the way to season 10. and I put it down there and then I change things anyway.
Dude,
It's never like
seasons easily.
I know,
Right.
but we just can't. Like, I don't know if we'll have time to do 100 of them, but we'll try.
Hey man, we keep going another 12 years and I'll retire, and then I'll have 24/7. I can just do nothing but movies and movie reviews.
Oh, that'll be great. I'm down with that. But yeah, hopefully we can start getting paid for that, because we already do the Patreon. So thank you all for our Patreon listeners and everything. We love you guys. We still do our Patreon only, which we'll have James coming up for Patreon only. I think in the first of the year, but we'll talk about that another time.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't tell you how pleased that we're able to get you on our show, James. It's just a wonderful, wonderful thing, because both of us were big Tempe fans. So just the fact that you were involved in a lot of these movies back then, and getting to talk about some of these films, that's just a super big positive plus, in my opinion.
It's sincerely always a pleasure. I love coming on the show. I think you guys are a complete riot. I love what you guys do.
Thank you.
We're both just big horror nerds, or nerds and film nerds, like, period.
Yeah.
So
Collector nerds.
Yeah, and
right.
I mean, I think it's weird, because I was looking back at the movies that I picked for this season, for season 6. A lot of it's like drama or action, films, because we do horror all the time for other things anyway. I like more action and drama, because there's just so many out there that nobody has heard of. And maybe this will be something, we could be like Red Letter Media, where we just do the worst, or we could do things that actually are pretty decent that maybe people should go see.
Right. And that's the thing.
Nice to have a mix of both.
Right. I mean, realistically, you guys are a lot younger than me, but at the same token, it's one of those things where, as I get older, I'm kind of realizing I'll always have a love for horror. But at the same token, I'm finding myself leaning more towards drama and comedy and action. I mean, the next movie we're doing isn't even a horror film, so I get it.
Yeah.
Not to differ with you, sir, but I believe I'm older than you.
I don't think you are.
56, baby.
What's up?
I said I'm 56.
You okay? You got me. I'm going to be 50 this year. But the important thing is, Paul, you don't look it. That's the important
thing.
Thank you very much.
I know everybody asked me, like, how old is Paul? And I didn't know. Now I know. So everybody always asks. I'm like, older than you probably think.
It's the cookies and moo juice that keep me young.
Hey, that's not a bad thing.
And being infantile.
Right.
I can definitely tell you guys I'm younger than both of you. So there you go. I'm the youngest of the group. So I am. Which is so funny, because I guess I discovered you, James, in, I want to say 2003 or 4, or something, when I first watched Bloodletting for the first time, and everything. And then that's when my Tempe, I just kept going down, or whatever, because after that I was like, well, this is a good one. Let me check out Zombie Cop.
Yeah. Well, I apologize for that, but
I'm saying, I was like, oh, well, all the Tempe movies must be fantastic.
Yeah.
And
surprise that they're not.
but they were fun. Even Zombie Cop, which it's not fun to watch people who are very PC, by the way, but it is, it's a lot more fun in the sense of, like, you guys went out and you made a movie, and you guys are excited about it.
I always looked at that time period of, like, the early shot on video, cinema home video stuff, like those 6 movies that we made during that time. I always look at it as an audience member, as watching home movies of people you don't know. So it's about as much fun as that. So
I don't know. It was fun to me, but we are about at that time. So we are going to do this stinkometer. You remember the stinkometer, right, James?
I do. Yes, I do.
Okay. And so Paul, explain to us the stinkometer.
Well, the stinkometer is a way in which we score our films, by which the lower the number, the less stink there is, and the higher the number, the stinkier the movie is. Now, that necessarily isn't a bad thing, because we love our stinky movies around here, but the higher number means that the movie had a lot more problems usually. and issues going for it. So if you thought the movie was really, really good, you might give it a 1 or a 2. If you thought it was kind of meh, you might give it a 5, 5.5, something like that. And if you thought that it was just a big steaming cow flop, you might give it a 9 or a 10. And then we add our 3 scores up from our 3 judges, and then total it up, and then we see where on the ladder of stink that movie appears, and if it, which the stinkiest movie of the season is.
So we already started, like I said, we started with a movie called The Better Place with Joe Turek, and that got a really low score. So it was a pretty decent movie. I'm interested to see where this goes. So James, do you want to start off?
I would be happy to. My rating is going to be based on the fact that, again, make no mistake, this is not a good movie. It's not. But was it an entertaining movie? Yes. Was it a fun movie? Yes. I was entertained the entire runtime. I did have some problems with the movie, though, specifically the waste of a very talented cast. So I'm going to go out on a limb here and give this movie a solid. Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go with 4.
All right. Actually, it's funny that you say that, because I was going to give it a 4 as well. And I was like, I was actually between originally 4 and 6, because I can't give it a 5. It's not like meh and kind of whatever.
Right.
But the only reason I would have gave it a 6 is because it's sort of got that little bit of, it's got a little bit of stink to it. But the thing is that little bit of stink gets outweighed by the fun.
Even the stink on this thing is kind of charming in a sense. Let's put it in fact, it's funny that you say that, because I was also debating between a 4 and a 6, and the only reason that I was considering going a 6 is what I discussed earlier. The transfer on the film made it very difficult to get into, which again, that's why I actually went with a 4, because it's like, if I'm having a positive response to something that looks like shit, that's a good sign right there.
Exactly. So what about you, Paul?
Yeah, well, back in the day, I probably would have given this a 7, 7.5, but it's just very different seeing this with 30 some years, 40 whatever it is years later on, and I had a lot more fun with it. So this one was pretty solidly 4.5 for me, pretty much when I saw it.
So 12.5 score right there. That's pretty good.
So that's pretty good.
I actually want to see because we have a thing, if people want to check it out, it's called the Ladder of Stink. Paul found this out. He put it up on
as the movies ascend to stinky heaven, and they get closer and closer and closer depending on their score. And that's the likes of some of the stinkiest films are up in stinky heaven. You got to get a 30 for that.
Now, out of curiosity, what's been the stinkiest movie you guys have ever reviewed?
I would have to say Miss Werewolf. It's the only movie that got a 30 plus.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, this ties with Polymorph.
Oh,
there you
wow.
Go. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah, 12.5 for Polymorph as well. So interesting.
I'm honored.
Yes.
Yeah, which we enjoyed.
Yeah, we did enjoy it. Even we had our resident science expert, and even though she did debunked a couple of science stuff or whatever, which happens all the time. You know, we can't. I mean, you can't talk to a NASA person without. She's a NASA intern. Can't talk to somebody like that without her going, okay, that's not right. Or whatever. But yeah, she really enjoyed it though, and that. Those make me happy when that happens, especially when I pick it. And Now You Know, it ties with Now You Know, which is a fun little Jeff Anderson, Kevin
I've
Smith
seen it,
thing. So these, I think that got a higher rating in itself. It would have got a lower rating if a dog didn't die in it, because we were all sad about that. That was an unneeded comedy bit. But anyway, this was a fun one for us to do. So I was very happy. And I was happy that you enjoyed it, James, because I really did not know, because I hadn't seen it. So I had no idea what you were going to think, what I was going to think, and what Paul was going to think. And you know what the worst part is? The first time I tried watching it, I was tired, and was sat on my couch. I was like, I'm just gonna sit on my couch and watch the movie, and I just passed out, or whatever.
You just couldn't do it?
Well, no, it wasn't the fault of the movie or anything. It's literally just because I was just too tired.
Right.
When I watched it the second time, I made sure I was up in upright position, and I wasn't basically laying down,
Right.
or whatever. And I watched it, and I was like, this is this movie is so much fun.
Well, it kind of threw me for a little bit too, because I started watching this. I got about 10-15 minutes in, and I'm like, man, I know I've seen this before. I remember some of this. I remember not liking this. I can see exactly where this is going. But as it went on, it got better and better, and I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah. Which made me happy too, because we had a low score on the last one, which was also mine, and this one. So we started off the season pretty, low, but I'm sure Paul will bring us back. And
well, we both have put out movies that are both bad and good. But if you had to describe us, I would definitely say that Jonathan's more the good angel on the shoulder, and I'm more the bad angel.
I can see that, definitely. Now, out of curiosity, have you guys decided what the next film is going to be?
I think Paul's got it figured out.
Yes, I do.
Do you want to say it, or because we're doing, interestingly enough, and I don't know, James, did I ask you about this? If you're interested in doing it, we've got a thing where we're doing guests, have the guests pick movies or whatever.
No, but I'd love to be involved, definitely.
Yes, okay, because you've done the show enough now that you can kind of get that.
But know what movies we're interested in.
But yeah, we're trying to have 4 episodes per month. And the third episode would be a guest,
right?
And
stuff. Just let me know. I would love to be involved. Definitely.
We'll definitely get you back here to do another one. It will all we ask is that it's not by the same director or something that of the same season, that's already been done. So sorry, no prime target for this one, but maybe next year.
Maybe next year.
Yeah, but this year no, because. So this year you'd have to find something, and it would have to be something that everybody can easily watch, something on Tubi or something. You don't have to go and buy it.
That's kind of been one of the things. Is a lot of my movies are ones that, although I'm slowly changing that, but they're mainly ones that I already have. So we'd have to get you over here to the studio, which wouldn't be a horrible thing. We'd love that.
No.
A weekend sometime.
We have been doing a lot of Zooms, and that is when Paul does get. Ones from Tubi, like we last season we had The Last Vampire, which or The Last Vampire on Earth or something.
But the next movie we're gonna do definitely is one that not only is it not out in DVD, in physical medium, it never made it past VHS.
So we have to actually hook up the VHS player just to play it, just to watch it.
I mean, I can tell you what it is, or you want to stay in suspense. It's up to you guys.
Well, no, we'll save it for after the podcast because we don't want to let people know.
I'm curious, but I want the audience to wonder what the hell we're talking about.
I know, because we don't even tell anybody until we release these podcasts.
Well, that's perfect because it keeps everybody curious.
Well, I will say that it is just Jen, and I will say that I have a lot of makeup. After Miss Werewolf, I'm still sort of like kissing her behind in order to make sure she's coming back.
You asked what's like the worst films that we've ever done. Miss Werewolf is one of them. And I'm going to say most of them are Paul's. Like there were maybe a couple by me, but like most of them were Paul's. And what is the other one that Actium Maximus is terrible. And that's also Troma. And just because like that was the first one of the second season, I could not even like stay awake. I was
how many breaks did you have to take in between that one watching it?
We didn't. We suffered through the whole thing.
God!
But
and that's just it too. That's what makes us, I think, different than a lot of other programs. Is that we get together, unless it's a Tubi thing. But otherwise, in the studio, we get together, we watch the movie, and boom, we go right into the show. We don't take it and write for like a week or a few days.
Right.
This is all just right off the cuff. Usually, the only person person who introduces the movie is the one who does all the background research and comes armed with notes and can talk about all that. Whereas everybody else, usually they don't know what the hell they're watching until 2 minutes before it goes on.
Nice.
Right. And we like to do that also because we have no idea sometimes.
I know,
Sometimes
it's so
things
fun.
change. So sometimes, like if I said, oh, if Paul says we're going to do that, but then like Justin can't show up to do the podcast, we have to do something else. And then he'll, you know what I mean? So we don't like to announce the things ahead of time because we don't know if something's going to, sometimes we've had issues where we couldn't find the movie or whatever too, you know? So we had that in the beginning for real. And, or in the case of A Better Place last year, we could play it, but it didn't play very well. It kept skipping.
Oh, it kept freezing up. Oh,
yeah. So we ended up just going with the janitor last year instead, which was a lot of fun. Had some cameos and different stuff in that. And I liked it.
Why I'm going to be bringing a backup movie just in case we can't figure out and get the VHS fired up for this.
Yeah, we've had problems with the VHS hookup sometimes too. So you just never know. So anyway,
and this is a situation where I actually wrote to the people who put it out there and said, is there any way this movie's ever going to come out in DVD or Blu-ray? And they wrote back and said, not at this time.
Wow.
Yeah, that's sad because it does seem like a movie that would,
and it's not available anywhere else for any reason.
It's sad when, distributors are like that,
Well, then people better tune in next time to find out what movie it is.
Yeah, and they might actually know what it is.
It's a lot of fun too. So yeah.
But thank you so much, James. What have you been up to?
I am just basically trying to finish up our revenge horror thriller Trivial, which will serve as my third directorial effort.
Nice.
When do you think you'll be finished with it?
Out
of curiosity,
we have run into some reshoot issues. Nothing. I mean, actually, I'm kind of glad that we did because I think it'll give us the opportunity to really, really hammer home the ending. So my goal at this point now is to hopefully have this out first quarter of next year. Cool. So my original goal was I wanted it out in November. There's no way that's going to happen. And part of it was because this is the first time I've shot in 6K. And we shot in 6K. We did a 4-camera setup with this where, because of the subject matter, 3 of the cameras are 1080p because the entire thing is supposed to be basically like a home, basically like a low rent game show. So 3 of the cameras are 1080p, which are technically the studio cameras. The actual movie is shot on 6K. The problem with that is now I had 4 times the amount of footage to sift through to get the takes that I wanted. So it was a very long process. So,
oh wow. Well, I'm glad. I think because this won't be coming out till January. So,
right. Okay, well, hopefully, my goal is to have it out probably February or March at the latest. In the meantime, I've also been I've done a couple of acting gigs. What was it? I did an urban thriller called The Beautiful Ones that I believe is coming out at the end of the year.
Nice.
I did a comedy western called what was it? Big Trouble in Jackass Flats.
That sounds like fun.
That sounds like fun.
But yeah, I mean, the good news is I've been keeping busy, which I can't complain. It beats flipping a burger. So.
There you go.
Yeah, keeping busy and doing what you love.
Right, exactly.
So hopefully everybody will see Trivial in the beginning of 2023, but whenever it comes out. That's the thing. I hate when people are like, when is this movie coming out? I'm like, when it comes out.
Right, exactly. My days of I'm horrible at meeting a deadline anyway, and the only person that puts the deadlines are myself. And it's like, why are you? I'm obviously not gonna rush through this just to meet some fictitious deadlines. It's like it'll come out when it comes out. So
yeah, I mean, I think sometimes setting up deadlines is good because it gets your fire under your ass to get it done. But but then when you don't meet that deadline, you can't beat yourself up. You got to be like, well, I'm just going to push the deadline another month or 2 months or whatever, how long I think it's going to take,
I've been very fortunate that I've never had a situation where Krista got delayed a good year and a half past its original release date, because we had a ton of issues with that. I've never had an issue where I've had people reach out or fans reach out going, where the hell is this movie? You said it was coming out here. Everybody's very understanding. Like I said, the only person that's ever severely disappointed by it is me. So
yeah,
we very much enjoyed Krista, by the way. I don't know if you got to hear our review.
I did. Yeah. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much, guys. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and so I guess we can mention it because I think about this time we're gonna be doing it, but we're gonna do a Patreon only for Brimstone Incorporated with you, James. So we're really excited about that, so that we can talk about it, because I can't really review the movie, and you even said like getting somebody else and Paul and stuff, and I think it'd be more fun if we did it for Patreon only, where we just talk to you about like it's like a separate commentary track. Basically,
I'd have a blast. Yeah, I'd absolutely love that. Just let me know when, and let's do it.
Let's do it. So we'll set that up. But so expect some really fun Patreon only stuff, and only for $1. That's what you get. So $1 you get a free podcast that you're not going to get here. Or whatever, which I think is amazing, and
it is money well spent.
Edwards' millions of fans will now
That's
join.
Right.
I hope so. I hope so, because that would mean that they'd have to listen to this whole podcast to hear us talk about that, and then we don't break it up and say, hey, check out like our Patreon only, blah 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 blah, and then go right back into the podcast like some people do. I think probably better podcasters. But anyway, we have fun with this. We enjoy doing the Patreon only because it's an extra one, and it's our chance also to review other films that we can't review on this podcast, because some of them are too famous and we just don't want to do them because everybody else does them
by other groups, Red Letter Media or Mystery Science Theater.
The Red Letter Medias we do a lot anyway, because
they've been following us, man.
Yeah, they did. We did Blood Freak first.
That's right.
And they did that
before them.
Have you seen that movie, James?
I sadly have not, and it's always.
Oh my goodness! I tell you what, you come for a weekend, I'll have nothing but crazy, weird, bizarre, fun movies.
Like I said, that sounds like an absolute blast. I'm down.
Yeah, and then we'll get you on some TikToks with Roman Harker.
Okay. Yeah. Like I said, I'm so looking forward to it.
Yes. Right. Well, thank you once again, James. This has been awesome. Stick around, chat with us, but everybody else, thank you guys for listening. Tune in. Next week we're gonna do a guest Patreon, and then it's Paul's episode. So you'll find out what that is, and Paul's got something really fun planned. I can't wait for you guys to check that out. So thank you all for checking us out, and have a good one.
Bye.
Bye.